Hello everyone, I am Eco100 with my friend Benga Dragon. How's it going, Benga?
Oh man, I am hyped up. This is what we got going on. We got the mini set coming, and I just can't wait to hear what your early thoughts are on this, man. I am hyped up. Let's go.
Yeah, this new mini set looks like it's going to be either really dangerous or really good. And we're going to talk about the dangerous and really good cards just in general. But yeah, overall, I am pretty excited about this. And I think the first card to talk about is just Mutants, obviously. The 7 mana 4/4 Murloc legendary that says Battlecry. Eat a minion in your opponent's hand, gain its stats. And just initial thoughts on this card is I like the hand interaction, and I actually really like the design. I just wish that it came out earlier. At 7 mana, I think it's a little bit too slow. I think that you would want to play this a little bit earlier, and because it's a bit expensive, it's a card that will only be in like niche or just control decks in general. It can't really be run in any mid-range deck. It's not going to be run in any aggro deck regardless, so that's fine. But it's just a little bit too slow to be running anything other than a pretty hard control deck that's going for a pretty greedy package. But I want to hear your thoughts about it. I think this is like a 3 out of 5 card that will see some play, but isn't going to like define the meta or anything.
Well, I saw your tweet the other day, and I gotta just tell everybody I always like what you put out on the Twitter sphere and stuff. So I follow Ecor on Twitter, and we both follow each other, so we got a presence over there. But your deal with the tweet pretty much said the same thing that I thought right away. Your deal was this. Your deal was it is just way too slow. And well, it's not way too slow, but you wish it was come out earlier, just like you just said. I had the same thoughts. As soon as I saw 7 mana, I said, 7 mana, 4/4. I didn't really look at the stat line because I understood that eat a minion and your opponent's hand, it gains its stats. It's very good if your intended target is something like Ticketus, right? Or
and it usually will be like that, or Yashiraj or N'Zoth, or like an old god or something. Yeah,
so it's kind of cool. But think about it, if you're playing it like that way, right? And you have it's a 7 mana 4/4. You get one chance, and by the time you're up against your opponent, if you're going that, you probably have about a 20 to like 15 or 20% chance of popping off the card that'll be there, because your opponent will have, maybe they'll have like 6 or 7 cards in their hand, maybe 2 spells, 5 cards, the 5 minions. If you're playing against like a priest, it's a kind of a dead card, and sometimes, so it's just a 7 mana 4/4. So the good thing that's going for it is that it is a disruptor, and you and I have talked a lot about the disruption aspect that's needed. Is it interactive? Yeah, it's interactive. Is it a 7 mana 4/4? No, it's potentially at least a 7 mana 5/5 if you're playing against.
The very worst, you get a 1/1 minion, because that is the lowest stats it can be.
Right, which would be unlikely because those would probably be played at some point
near the beginning, because they're lower mana usually.
Yeah. So this card here just doesn't look great though against aggro. It's really more of like a combo disruptor, and I think it's an okay effort. I would give it a 2 or 3 stars, maybe a little more. And I'm careful to give star ratings because of what I did with Arbor Up, and you are too. I know that we were like Arbor Up is junk, and we completely missed it. But I don't know, this one maybe 3.25. Maybe we can give it. Let's see how it plays, because it always is dependent on other cards that come out.
Absolutely. And another thing is what the meta is afterwards. Like if the meta slows down and there's a lot of control warlock and priest, and like the meta is really control based, I think this will be much better, because you can time it to be like, okay, I want to play this around turn 9 to try to counter the Yashiraj and maybe stop them from playing that the following turn, or play it right before they try to play Ticketus and try to counter certain things. So I think that this is a card that's dependent on the meta, but could potentially be very good.
Yeah, and it's going to stick around for a while too, so it's not going to be like here and then gone, unless who knows though. It seems that Hearthstone is capable though of just like dropping mini sets and stuff and adding things to the core set. I don't think that the year to year is going to be exactly the same it always has been, that the seasons will remain like where the sets will be in the meta as long. I think we're going to see some disruption in that as well too. That's like a counterpoint. Counterpoint for you,
Yeah, that's an interesting point actually, because they're releasing more cards, but we have no idea what they're gonna do. We have no idea what Blizzard's gonna do with that, but that is an interesting point to bring up. But the next card that we want to talk about is Primordial Dungeoneer, which is a 3 mana 2/3. And actually, let's just talk about all the Dungeoneers real quick, because they all basically do the same thing. They have a battle cry that says draw a spell, and then if you draw a spell of a certain school, like nature, frost, or holy, they get an ability. There's a priest one that says if you draw a holy spell, reduce its cost by 2. There's a mage one that says if you draw a frost spell, summon 2 1/1 elementals with freeze. And then there's a shaman one that says if it's a nature spell, also draw an elemental. And I'm gonna be honest with you, priest one, not that great. I'm gonna ignore that one. I don't think it has like really any potential. Well, not any potential, but I think it has the least potential of the 3. The priest one I think actually has some decent potential, especially in I was gonna say miracle priest, but that's not really the case because it'll disrupt rally. So you might not be able to get like the 2/5 as frequently. I forget what it's called, but the 2/5 that reduces the cost of a card in your hand by 1. So you don't want that to disrupt rally, but it could be in a control priest, right? You play this card on turn 3 for a little bit of tempo, draws you a card, and priest doesn't have too much card draw. They have tons of random card generation, but not a lot of card draw specifically, so this could help with that. And then you would just reduce the spell cost by 2 and you're able to play it. But the card that I think is actually going to be the most impactful, and I think the stars go, the mage one's maybe like a 2.5, priest is like a 3.5, and then shamans is probably about a 4.5 because it basically fixes the major issues, or well, the biggest issue. There are a lot of issues with shaman, and this only fixes one of them, but it fixes the draw problem, because if you're running nature spells and you're also running an elemental like mixed kind of synergy, you will draw potentially 2 cards. And if you're running the cage match custodian, that's what it's called, right? The 2-mana 2/2 that says draw a weapon. If let's say you're running a control shaman and you only run the cage match custodian and marsh spawn because they generate resources, well, you're guaranteed going to draw an elemental that will generate you more resources. If you're playing into a mid-range control or even Doomhammer based deck, because if you're very likely to draw cage match custodian, you can just draw Doomhammer and go crazy with it. So I actually really like the shaman one. I think that it has the most potential, probably like a 4.5, maybe even 5-star card. I just don't know off the top of my head how many good nature spells they have, although I think they have enough to make this card good. But yeah, I think this card has a lot of potential and will be run in most shaman decks because it's going to be their only source of draw. What are your thoughts on these 3 cards?
Well, I'm gonna start with the other like reverse order because I think we'll say the best for last, right? Devout Dungeoneer just kind of like is the least overwhelming, even though you said that you would give it a 3.5. I think it's though yet to be seen what type of archetype though we get for a priest, and the Devout Dungeoneer is kind of like not so exciting in a sense of that, you know, for rally and things like you said. It's a great card though, I guess, to drop on turn 3 if you're playing some kind of tempo, you know, a tempo priest, which we haven't seen. So it's like, well, like one of the things is, you know, like obviously you dropped out of 3 mana, you draw a spell. If it's a holy spell, you reduce its cost. You might even be able to play it that turn. So it's, you know, like that's really the way that tempo works is you're dropping cards down and then protecting your minions with spells and then kind of just pushing damage to the face, maybe buffing up something to protect a weaker minion and literally let your minions do the work. So priest is not really that kind of archetype all the time. Most of the time it's control. So it will lead to some kind of new archetype that we probably will see because the masterminds will be at work. Remember, we have 31 more cards that are coming out, or I think we're going to cover 8 today, so 27 more. But there's also the Frostweave Dungeoneer, you know, more Smorky Mage stuff. So freeze trying to be a thing. I'm sure it'll get some support. But last but not least, Primal Dungeoneer. We'll talk about that because when I saw this card, I said, wow, you know, the one thing that's cool about Primal Dungeoneer is it accomplishes exactly what Ecor and I were talking about over and over, is that we needed to have a draw in the shaman. We wanted shaman, elemental shaman. We were like, oh, you know, it seems like the deck is so close to being good. Like, what is missing? It's just missing something, you know? So for the druid, there are some nature spells, and for the shaman, there are also a lot of nature spells too. Some of them are overlaps. I mean, Lightning Bloom is a nature spell, obviously. Hex, you know, Dunk Tank. You have also the Tidal Surge, which is a nature spell. Serpentshire Portal, Lightning Storm. I mean, just to pretty much name all the quote unquote good shaman spells, which in some ways they're not all that good. I guess the best one would be Torrent, because it's essentially deal 8 damage to a minion, which costs 3 less if you cast a spell the last turn. So, you know, that's for a really control type archetype. But
well, yeah, this is kind of crazy actually. Wait, there are a lot of nature spells. I didn't even realize. I thought that there were like a mix, but no, most of their spells are nature. That's interesting.
Yeah,
I hadn't actually actually looked at that.
There's 17. I think there's 17 or 16. There's 16 cards that are nature spells, or 17 possibly, because I don't think I'm looking at Play Hearthstone and they don't count when they're dual class. You know, in the top is like 16 cards found for standard cards. In Shaman, when they're dual class, I don't think it registers. I could count them up real quick, or we could say that for
fine.
time.
We'll just save time and say that it's close.
It's 16 or 17. We'll count it up. But the problem with what you see here though is that this makes for some interesting ideas that Elemental Shaman can become very aggressive, extremely aggressive. Some cards, like, you know, if you say you did play this on, you played a minion, got a minion out there, then you get something like Lightning Bloom, you can just re-mana up right in that same turn, and maybe, you know, or the very next turn you could, you know, you'll be at like, say, you know, you'll be at 3 mana. I mean, you'll be at 4 mana. You'll be able to put down a 6 mana minion, which would be like something like your Fire Elemental that deals 4. So you're not only talking about like being able to do some damage, but you're also making a presence. You know, that card got a buff. So I think Elemental Shaman is going to be a thing, but it's going to be a kind of a different type of thing, in the sense that it's going to be less about that weapon that you were talking about and more about like kind of gaining the board and controlling the board, like we have talked about together that we wanted to see. But I think it's going to be a really powerful deck, because if it gets any other support, if Shaman gets any other support, the Elemental Shaman is going to be a thing, because it's already close enough. And I think this card could just put it over the edge.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm actually really excited to see where Shaman goes, especially after this card. But I just wanted to say one more thing about the Mage Dungeoneer. The only reason why I think it was going to be bad is because there are only like 3 or 4 frost spells in total for Mage. They've got they have 5. But one of them is Cone of Cold, which people don't usually run in their deck. One of them is Ice Barrier, which people only run like 1 of. Snap Freeze is unplayable. Brain Freeze is good, and so is Flurry, kind of. But there's only really one good frost spell, which is Brain Freeze. So unless good frost spells come out, that's why I thought that this card was going to be bad, just because it doesn't have a lot of support. But moving on to 4 cards that were also newly released unofficially, but other people have started talking about these cards. I want to talk about Lady Anacondra, because it's a 6 mana 3/7 that says your nature spells cost 2 less. And at the beginning, when I said that this is going to be scary, the reason why this is going to be scary is because what if this happens with a Celestial Alignment? You basically play Celestial Alignment turn, you know, you're Druid, you've ramped up a bit, probably play it by turn 5 or 6, reset everybody's mana, and then the turn after Celestial Alignment, you play, the turn you play Celestial Alignment, you play Lady Anacondra, then you play Nourish, then you play, then another Nourish or Overgrowth or something, Lightning Bloom perhaps, then you play Cenarian Ward, and you do all that stuff on the very first turn, whereas usually it takes 1 turn to set up, and then with all of your mana you'll just pop off. But if you have Lady Anacondra in hand, you don't even need that turn to set up, because everything's going to be free. You can just literally play anything, because mana no longer matters. And then your opponent, because they only have 1 mana, because they just played Cenarian or the Celestial Alignment, is not able to play the game anymore. Like, they basically just concede. If the Druid has Celestial Alignment and Lady Anacondra, if I were the opponent and like not playing Druid, I just concede there 100% of the time, because I can no longer play cards. They're playing a ton of free stuff, and even if their hand isn't insane, all they need to do is draw 1 good free card, because Lady Anacondra's on the board, and then I just lose. I'm gonna be honest, I think Celestial Alignment is one of my least favorite designed cards like ever. I've said that Enchantress Flow's up there, and definitely Deck of Lunacy was a garbage card from a design standpoint, and so is Oh My Yogg, but I would say this is on the level of those. Obviously it hasn't come out yet, so it's a little bit less right now, because at least this like fits Druid. Like, Oh My Yogg doesn't even fit Paladin. You can't even argue that, and it's stupid. But at least this is like, okay, synergized with nature spells. You kind of want to ramp it. It's a kind of beefy minion, which is something that's usually done in Druid. So at least it kind of fits flavor-wise. But I'm very worried about this card. Very much so.
Well, when I saw Celestial Alignment for the first time, and I just was like, Hearthstone, what are you doing, man? You know?
True.
And then I played against it, and I'm like, okay, you know, it's not so whatever. It's one of those things, it's either you just just win the game or you lose badly. It's one of those kind of one of those cards. Like it hasn't really shown in any archetype that it has a positive win rate, but it's just a really crazy card. It's more of a like an entertaining card. If you could get that over, it's pretty entertaining for your side. Now, Lady Anacondra is big, like I'm looking at it, and when I first saw it, I'm like, your nature spells cost 2 less. I'm like, yeah, big deal, right? It's another downward mana cheat. And then today, Ecor tells me, oh yeah, and then we play a Celestial Alignment, and now they cost 0.
And everything's free.
Yeah, so that's
Dude, just say 0, but cannot cost less than 1. Why does Blizzard always create ways to like generate free cards? There shouldn't be ways where you play free cards. The whole point of a card game is to have a trade-off where you play something at the cost of some resource. As soon as you make cards free, things just go absolutely crazy. And I hate that Lady Anacondra can potentially make cards free after Celestial Alignment. This is really annoying to me. It actually pisses me off.
Well, you think about it, it's kind of funny, right? Because if you look at like think about Alexstrasza, right? The new one. So look at a card like Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, right? Mm-hmm. Now that was a 0 mana. The battle cry would give your deck was 0 mana. That was 9 mana. So that card was a 9 mana 8/8, which technically Lady Anacondra doesn't have a great stat line, right?
True. But you're using it for the ability. But
you're using it for the ability.
The stat line's bad,
right? So you cast a 7 mana spell basically, which just makes your deck and your opponent's deck now everything is 1 mana, right? The very next turn you could play Lady Anaconda for 1 mana. So you get an 8 mana, you get an 8 mana 3/7 that essentially will make more than one card 0 mana. I know they're minions, whatever, but they're also not random. From Alexstrasza, it was minions. This is spells, but some of your spells are really good. Like Centaurian is cast an 8 mana minion and get 8 armor, right?
Yeah. And then you also can ramp back up. Like, what's it called? Overgrowth will be 0 again. So then the way that, and Nourish. So you could have the next turn tons of mana so you can play whatever you want the following turn.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is like you said, why did they do this? Well, I don't know. I mean, but for a while there, that they put Dragon Queen Alexstrasza back so that it was 9 mana get 2 dragons that were 0 mana, or 1 mana each, right? But now
same with the Rogue Galacron, by the way.
Right. And so it makes me think, what the hell were they doing? What are they doing? Like, why all of a sudden now it's acceptable? Like what do they want? Another video of us all yelling and screaming that it shouldn't be 0 mana? I don't understand. So I'm with you, man.
Yeah. People could say like, oh, Hearthstone players love to complain, but they're literally printing more cards based around the ideas that a lot of people have spoken up about, saying that they don't like. Like, it's not like they tried something new and they're like, oh, this ended up being broken and annoying. We didn't like it very much. Blah, 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 blah. This is like, we want hand interaction. They gave us one that's way too slow, so we're probably going to complain about that because they like created a card that didn't actually fix the problem. And then we're like, we don't like free cards. Oh, Blizzard's just printing another card that'll give them free cards. Like, it's just, it's not,
I think it's empirically proven, right? And I'm not saying that it's like that it's not a complaint. That's not what I'm saying. But I think evidence will show you that there is evidence that a happy Hearthstone player is not one that has 0 mana spells. I think that for only a while does it happen. But there's just, I think the masses are complaining about 0 mana spells and 0 mana cards. And then again, they keep on printing them. So I don't know. I don't know why they do it. I really do think it's kind of bad for the game in the sense that I think everything should be a minimum 1 mana. And the reason why is because it just makes for like stopping turns. You know what I mean? Like, you can't, there's so much craziness that can happen. It's like infinite possibilities when you have a 0 mana card. It's just, it gets bad. I can't put my finger on why I don't like it. I mean, I like it when it's me doing it, but I don't like it when my opponent's doing it, right? Keep it real. Yeah. I don't know.
So. And then there's another Druid card that's coming out that synergizes with this. And it is, after you cast a nature spell, summon a 4/2 snake with Rush. And it's an 8 mana 4/9. But again, with Celestial Alignment, you make this 1 mana with Lady Lady Anacondra, start playing free nature spells, and you also get to flood your board with 4/2s. Obviously, this will be like ideal situation, and I don't want to get too far into this this other Druid card, the 8 mana 4/9 beast, but it again makes the Celestial Druid very scary, and I think it's one of the worst cards ever printed in Hearthstone, and that doesn't even include Wild. Like, I've heard several viewers of mine saying it's like starting to become an actually like powerful deck in Wild that shuts the opponent out from being able to play a turn.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the other garbage part about Celestial Alignment. Let's just say that it only set your mana back down to 1 and made all of the cards 1 mana, right? So you could still combo off and be able to play tons and tons and tons of stuff, but it didn't stop your opponent from being able to play the game. Like, for me, if I'm playing anything other than, like, you know, maybe a ramp druid myself with like clowns. Actually, clowns get countered because everything's 1 mana, but not important. Let's just say I'm playing like maybe ramp druid or big paladin or big warrior where maybe it's okay. If I'm playing literally any other deck, as soon as Celestial Alignment's played, I just don't get to play the game anymore and I concede. And a card like Fluffy Winged Snake, well, we don't know if that's necessarily the name. It's a early released card that wasn't officially released by Hearthstone.
Yeah, I was gonna comment on that. Fluffy Winged Snake is definitely not the name.
It's definitely not the name. That's the name that they have listed here. So don't quote me on that one.
Fluffy, like firstly, Fluffy. Come on, Fluffy. Come on, Hearthstone. You know it's not Fluffy. Just release the damn card, Fluffy. But anyway, okay. But
yeah, I just think that this card is gonna also be strong in Celestial Alignment Druid, which I already think is way too strong. But I don't want to talk about Druid anymore. I want to talk about the last 2 cards, which are
Fluffy.
Interesting.
Fluffy Pilgrims.
Okay, they both say Fluffy in the name, but I don't think that's actually, they're not going to keep that. And they both revolve around these thing called Pilgrims. They're 2 mana Pilgrims, and when they're summoned, they're summoned with random effects. And we don't know what those random effects will be. I'm assuming that it's just going to be not like a battle cry, but a keyword, right? Rush, Divine Shield, Taunt, any of those. I can't think of any more off the top of my head. That's weird. Or it's like spell damage or something, or whatever. And I think that that is an interesting thing, because like there's a lot of RNG in Hearthstone. We've already discussed this, but I don't mind RNG like this as much, where it's not like probably an insanely huge impact, but it will impact the board and determine how you play the game in future turns. It's not like I'm randomly generating, 5, 6, 7 cards over the course of a couple of turns like Priest can do, and there's no way I can read the opponent's hand. It just summons a lot of 2/2 minions, so the stat line will be the same, that are slightly different. And I think that because the Paladin one is a 7 mana, summon 5 of these Pilgrims, I think that each one of them will be different. I don't think that they would like all be Taunt or all be Rush or whatever. But I think that is interesting, and I think that this is a good amount of RNG to have in a game of Hearthstone. Like, because Hearthstone is an online card game, it can utilize randomness better than physical card games, right? Because physical card games, you'd like roll a die and be like, oh, or flip a coin. That's something that happens a lot. Like in Yu-Gi-Oh, we'd flip a coin or whatever. So it was limited, but this takes the fact that it can be random, doesn't go too far with it, but keeps it enough to be pretty fun. And I like that. I like that a lot, actually. I'm pretty happy with these cards. And even if they're not necessarily great, because I don't think that they'll be that good, just looking at them, like a 3 mana 3/2 Death Rattle summon a 2/2, that's fine, but I wouldn't play it over cards that actually synergize with my deck. And a Paladin 7 mana 5 2/2 Pilgrims, I wouldn't run this over most Paladin cards either, because Paladin's way overtuned, but I think that they're fun designed. I think this is a good way to run RNG.
So okay, so the Fluffy Winged Snake is a Druid card, is that right? Yeah, it is, right? Okay. So Lady Anacondra, now your nature spells are 0 mana, right? There's some of them that will be 0 mana, which whatever, so because they'll cost 2 less. There are some like nature studies, of course, which is a 1 mana, right? So it'll be now 0 mana if it's in your hand. And if you even had done that craziness with the Celestial Alignment, then you have some 0 mana things. Essentially, the Fluffy Winged Snake is an 8/4/9 that'll summon a 4/2 snake with Rush. So after you cast a nature spell, and you could kind of do some stuff. So again, 8 mana, it's like one of those dream cards. Like you're like, wow, in theory, you're like, yeah, do what Venga just said, and like awesome, yeah, turn 8, let's go, let's do it like that. We'll just, bang it out. It is a beast, so you can cheat it out earlier with one of the other.
Oh, with the Druid card that reduces cost of a beast that you draw. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think about that, but
yeah. So you have something like that. So there are some synergies that are developing there, but at a 8 mana 4/9, it's probably just like a dream, right? But if you can somehow get it into your hand, like in a little earlier, maybe you could catch it on turn, you get it ready on turn like 5 or something and reduce its cost by 2 mana. So that's a 6/4/9, and you don't have to have the Lady Anacondra, combo going or whatever. So
this is similar to the exotic Mount Seller, though, the one that would summon 3/3 beasts. It's 1 mana more, but it's got, I think, 1 more health, and it's in a deck that has a little bit more cheat potentially. So I think it's a better exotic Mount Seller, and exotic Mount Seller was decent.
Oh yeah, actually now you're talking, because you can I see what you're saying. And how many times did you love seeing that beast with Rush? Like, the
4/1 little griffin, so you could just trade in. Now every single one of those minions is going to be a 4/2 with Rush. I mean, the 2 won't matter too much. It's still probably going to die regardless, but it's something. It's a little bit better.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. So that in that case, it's actually pretty good. And wow, so this card is maybe not so bad at 8 mana.
I mean, I don't think it's insane. You're right. At 8 mana it is a little bit slow, but I think in certain decks it'll at least be like good-ish. And maybe some people build some decks around it, like the exotic Mount Seller. I don't know. Maybe they run like just this minion and the card that draws beasts for reduced cost, and then that way you guaranteed get this for reduced cost every time. Who knows?
Yeah. I think I mean, why not, right? Or even you can run this, and there's some possibilities here. So it's pretty interesting. It'll make for new archetypes. We'll see what happens. We'll have to see what happens.
Okay, so we talked about the cards that did officially-ish come out, but now we're going to talk on your segment about what we still want to see and what we predict will happen over the course of this mini set.